So, I'm a young college girl, and I'm fairly used to getting catcalled, so this event started to seem out fairly normal to me, but quickly got my heart racing. I was driving back to my apartment from campus. My apartment's about half a mile down from campus, and in front of my complex is a gas station. I decided to stop and get a drink after class since I was super thirsty after walking around all day. When I parked, I noticed this tall, black male in baggy clothes leaning against the cigarette machine outside of the shop. He watched me pull up and stared at me through the windshield while I was unbuckling my seatbelt. I grabbed my purse and got out of the car, him staring me down the entire time. I turned to him, smiled, and acknowledged his presence, just trying to be friendly. Anyways, I grab and purchase my drink and leave the store, and notice he's still there. When I open my car door, he starts heading towards the side of the building to my apartment complex. I didn't think anything strange of it. To me, he was just a normal guy that hangs out in front of the gas station. Well, I pulled out of the gas station and started to head towards my apartment. I noticed he was walking towards my turn where my building is. I parked my car in front of my building, and at this point, I completely lost track of him. Now, usually the walk to my building takes less than a minute, but this walk seemed to take hours. I start walking across the parking lot to my building, and then I heard fast-paced footsteps coming up to my left-hand side, so I look over and see this man from the gas station, eyes wide, hands in his pocket, quickly walking up towards me. I panic and quickly start to walk up the stairs to my apartment on the second floor. I reach the first step, and at this point, he's right behind me, and again, I say hi, acknowledging his presence and trying to act as calm as I possibly can. But my heart was literally beating out of my chest. So I'm racing up the stairs and he's quickly following behind me, and I'm hoping that my key fob flashes green, because usually it takes a few times for it to let me into my apartment. I get inside and he's running up the stairs right behind me, and I slam the door shut and hear a loud banging on my door. I lock it and run away into my room and call campus police. Campus police found him the next day. This man had a fanny pack on, full of bath salts and a loaded revolver. Who knows what he would have done to me if he had gotten his hands on me that day. It truly was the scariest day of my life. This is based on a true story that terrifies me to this day. This happened a few years ago, and I'm an Asian male who was then around my early to mid-30s. I ran a small business with my business partner, and it would sometimes require us to travel to other states. We usually went to motels to stay during the night. Also during the night, my business partner and I drank some alcohol. Anyways, I woke up at like midnight, dehydrated from the drinks I had a couple hours before. I was very tired, and didn't think twice about stepping outside of my room at such a late time. The motel's vending machine happened to be in a distant, dark corner from all the other rooms. There were two vending machines. I was at one, and at the other, this man that kept buying bagged chips and cookies. I didn't really take note of this, and was simply annoyed that the vending machine had eaten my dollar without even giving me my bottle. I only had a $20 bill, so I went to go and get change. But when I came back, this man started interrogating me intensely. Apparently he had left his wallet on top of the vending machine, but it was suddenly gone. And of course, he accused me of being a thief. "Where's my fucking wallet?" he yelled. I don't know. I don't have your wallet." Then I was conscious of my surroundings and took notice. He had stacks of vending machine goods. I soon assumed that he was on drugs. He kept asking me for his wallet, and I would reply that I didn't know. Finally, he reached into his pockets. Normally, that is where people usually have their wallets, but suddenly he pulls up his gun and points it at my chest. Inside, I was shaking. I have two baby girls at home, I thought at the moment. I'll never see them again. If he pulls the trigger, then I'm dead. However, these other two men were loitering around our location. Before I've seen them walking back and forth around the motel. This man saw these guys and asked me, "Are they your friends?" Knowing that answering yes or no may 70% harm me either way, I just stood there without a reply. He said, "Wait here," as he turned his back away from me. As he walked off 20 feet, I dashed as fast as I could. The distance would usually be lengthy back to my room, but I got back to my room in immediate seconds due to my adrenaline rush. My energy was so strong that when I got back, I woke up my sleeping business partner. I just wanted a bottle of water to satisfy my thirst. Instead, I almost lost my life. It's such luck that I managed to pull myself from a dangerous situation. Anyways, to all you out there, be careful. I was pretty much raised by my grandmother, since my mom and dad were not exactly great at the parent thing. My grandmother took great care of me. She couldn't afford a house in the better parts of the city, but she did everything for me. About the same time as I was done with my education and ready to start my own adult life, she started to show signs of Alzheimer's. I was devastated and refused to let her go to a nursing home. So instead, I moved back in with her. Determined to care for her as long as she had cared for me for all those years. I would leave her during my work hours, but be home for lunch, and in between, the lady next door would check in on her. Her main problem was that she forgot to eat and needed someone to tell her what to do and when to do it. She was still the sweetest old lady though. Well, one day I came home from my lunch break and heard my grandma talking to someone in the kitchen. She uttered, "Can't you find it, dear?" I rushed into the kitchen and saw a man going through her purse. When he heard me come in, he stopped and turned around and had a wild look in his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" I growled, trying to sound intimidating, which is a hard thing to do when you're a petite woman who had just encountered a possible burglar. "It's your cousin Danny, dear. He came for the money, you see," my grandmother explained as cheerful as ever. "Grandma, I don't have any cousins, and I don't know this man," I replied, not taking my eyes off him. Could he be on drugs? I couldn't see any weapon on him, and he was lean and slim. Maybe he wouldn't risk fighting me. For all he knew, I could be a martial arts expert. "He came for the money, darling. He's buying us a new camper," my grandmother continued, and started to tell the old story of how she once took me on a holiday in a camper when I was 6, and how we had the greatest time. "Get out, right now," I said as calmly as possible to the man, who was starting to look rather uncertain about how to deal with the situation. "Follow me out, and I'll give you the cash I got, but you and I are walking out of here right now." To my utter surprise, he agreed with no further argument and walked out right in front of me. I slammed the door shut the moment he was over the threshold and returned to my grandmother, who was now happily recalling our trip to Disney World on my 10th birthday. I wasn't surprised to discover that all her meds were gone and her wedding ring was missing. After this incident, I realized that I couldn't give my grandmother the care she needed and deserved on my own, and I got her a place in a nursing home close by. I visit very often, and all the nurses there love her. She really is a wonderful lady. Even in her later stages, she's sometimes talked about cousin Danny and his camper, and I would usually just play along. But personally, I prefer no further interaction with the man dubbed Cousin Danny. I have a lot of creepy and weird stories, but this is by far my friend's favorite and the most legit creepy thing I can think of that's happened to me. About 8 years ago, I started going to community college, which meant I had long days in classes at random times. When I got home from school, I would always park my car in the church parking lot near my house. I lived in a small house behind my parents' house at the time. One day I noticed that there was a man sitting in this green SUV parked a few cars over from mine at around 9 p.m. when I got home. I thought it was weird because no one parked there at night as it was the middle of the suburbs, but I just figured that it was likely a one-time thing and forgot about it. The next day I got home at around 2 p.m. and the car was in the exact same spot with the guy just sitting there doing nothing. I thought it was weird that he was there again, but just went to my house and watched TV for a while. I then got a call from my friend down the road asking if I wanted to go for a drive, so I left to go pick her up. I noticed that the guy was still there in his car, and he was still there when I got back. This ordeal went on for a couple of weeks. He was there every day at all hours, morning, day, and night. He would even be there until 4 a.m. on some nights. I started to get really weirded out by this because there was probably 50 or more spaces to park in, and he was always 3 spaces away from mine. He knew I parked there, as I was the only car that parked there because there was a gate to my house and the fence across the normal spot. It was very unnerving that he was always there. Finally, one day I came home and the guy wasn't there, so I decided to park in the spot that he was always in. It didn't seem special. There were no extra trees in the spot, and it faced the fence. There were no hills on the other side, which were much prettier and more scenic to look at. Once I parked, I stayed there for a few minutes and called one of my friends. That's when I finally noticed something horrifying. I could see into every window of my house. I didn't have curtains at the time and had a pretty stupid habit of walking around in my underwear. I mean, I had a huge fence and there was no way to see into my house from the street. I freaked out and realized that he had been watching me. I took my parents' Mastiff and made him stay with me at nights after that. I also stopped parking in the church parking lot, unless it was during the day, and parked in the lot even though I had a huge open gate manually to get in and then close it for the dogs. I told my dad, but he thought I was crazy and paranoid, but my mom, she believed me. Well, one day we got in a truck and drove behind the guy's car to get his license plate number. He got really angry with us and stormed out of his car and screamed at us. My mom basically said, "You're really creepy. You could see in my daughter's house and you're here all the time during the day and night." And his excuse was that he was cooling down before he went home after he went to the gym, which made absolutely no sense. We called the police and they immediately went to his house. It turned out he was a married man with kids, and his excuse to them was that he was listening to his tapes, which was completely untrue, as I had actually snuck along the fence where he couldn't see me at one point, and just listened to what he was doing as his windows were down. He was just sitting there in silence. There were no tapes, and I never heard them. The police then warned him that he would be in very serious trouble if they found him there parked again, and that he was basically not allowed back there. I know the police get a lot of shit sometimes, but they were great during this incident, and they scared him. The next day, he wasn't around, and I thought it was over. It was also my friend's birthday, so I went out to dinner that night, and came home at around 11 p.m., and there was another car parked in the same exact fucking spot. I was livid. I knew it was him, but in a different car. I told my mom about this, and then just stayed at my parents' house because I was pretty freaked out. My mom decided to drive her car through the parking lot to see if he was still there. Once she drove through, she saw that no one was in the car. She figured it was a coincidence and drove past them, then turned the car around. Once she was turning the car around, she saw a man get up from a crouch position, then speed out. Apparently she thought to herself that this was the prime opportunity to follow him. He was going 70 miles per hour on a residential road and went through a few different streets trying to lose my mom. Finally, he went to the main road and there was a red light. My mom pulled up next to him and he pulled his sweatshirt over his face and covered himself with his arms so she couldn't see him. I'm pretty sure he thought that it was actually my dad going after him, who is huge and an ex-NFL player and is very intimidating looking. Once the light turned green, he sped off again, and after about 10 minutes, finally lost my mom. She immediately called the police, and they told her that it was very suspicious and that she should probably leave chases up to the police next time. After that, the man never came back, and I got curtains. To this day, I still don't know what his intentions were. I had a huge-ass 170-pound Mastiff, who was friendly to most people, but was very protective of me. To everyone, I also had a brother who was a double state championship winning hockey player and a huge dad, but the only one who intimidated him was my mom. Creepy-ass church parking lot man? Let's never meet again. One day, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was at the shopping center with my mother and grandmother. While they were in the supermarket, I was outside on the pavement playing with a boy about my own age. I think his mother owned a store there, but I wasn't entirely sure. While we were playing, a young woman in her early 20s walked past us and gave us a dirty look. It also kind of looked to me that she muttered something, but I couldn't quite make it out. However, my friend did hear what she muttered. He must have had super good hearing or something. He cried immediately and said, "She said, I'm gonna put you in a sack." Being a little kid who was afraid of just about everything, I freaked out. This all happened around 35 years ago, so my memory is a bit spotty, but somehow I managed to locate the vehicle of the gang. I clearly recall standing in front of the van, looking up at the windshield. What I saw still weirds me out to this day. In the front seat were 3 people. They were all bent over with their faces behind the dashboard, but I could see the top of their heads. The guy in the center, who appeared to be the leader, was wearing a phony-looking red wig, and in one hand he clutched a large black sack. I couldn't recall what the other 2 weirdos looked like, but all 3 men were swaying from side to side in unison. Petrified, I ran and grabbed my grandmother and brought her to the van. She didn't seem very concerned and just kept saying, "It's a wig, he's just wearing a wig." To this day, I have no idea who those people were.